Hello, everyone. Hamza and Natai here, reading from Beyond Illusion and Doubt, Chapter 3. We're about to read Aristotle. Hope everyone's doing well. And we were talking this morning about trying to be more active on Instagram and possibly some other social medias as we move along. So if there's ever something you hear, or if you're watching this on YouTube and you see like a couple of minutes, a shorter clip that you feel is powerful or resonates with you in some way, and if you want, you can let us know what those timestamps are. We're going to try to find them on our own, but if you find some that maybe we missed or gloss over, then we can make sure that they are presented in their short form so that more people see it, because of course not everyone's going to watch or listen to the entire podcast. So with that being said,
rambling and lost in the weeds.
With our being lost out here in the jungle somewhere. But okay, all right. So we'll start with Aristotle. I'll read the intro, the disciple, and then you'll read his Prabhupada. Okay. All right. Aristotle was Plato's leading student and the teacher of Alexander the Great. Although he was one of the most brilliant minds of ancient Greece, pioneering in such fields as astronomy, meteorology, biology, and zoology, Aristotle could still only guess about the nature of God. As Srila Prabhupada says here, by speculation, Aristotle may have known something about God, but our point is that we can know everything about God from God himself. Okay. I think the thing I was listening to, Herdayananda Swami, kept talking about Aristotle, and he kept saying that he was the early member of the Krishna conscious movement.
The philosophy is there. He just is, That's why I love this chapter, because Prabhupada gives him a lot of credit.
Yeah. So the disciple is reading when I read from here on out. Yeah. Aristotle constructed a system of abstract notions and principles: matter, form, and privation, potency, and act, the 10 categories, the 4 kinds of causes, and so on, which he tried to show were universal in scope, capable of explicating reality on all levels. He wanted to show how all of reality is thus intelligible. Aristotle thought of the cosmos as a hierarchy. At the bottom is prime or pure matter, which possesses no intelligible essence or form. It is pure potency without actuality. And at the top is God, the unmoved mover of the whole system, who is pure actuality. He is all that he could ever be, sheer form, pure intelligible, intellectual essence, with no tinge of matter or potentiality. In between are the changing substances, compounded of matter and form, the elements, minerals, plants, animals, humans, and the ethereal intelligences that move the stars. The higher up the scale you go, the more form predominates over matter. In this way, Aristotle rejected the separation between the world of forms and the world of matter that characterized the philosophy of his teacher, Plato. One modern philosopher has observed that Aristotle's conception of God was motivated entirely by dispassionate rational concerns. No extraneous ethical or religious interest influenced his idea, and that this did not go far toward producing an idea of God available for religious purposes.
So he is what, I'm not reading his Prabhupada, he is what they, in the Bhagavad Gita, right, there's the different people who are in pursuance of God.
Yeah.
Not necessarily of God, but you have the karmis who are just working so they can get the results of their work. Then you have the yogis who are, trying to attain self-realization.
Yeah.
And the jnanis, who I guess you could equate to like philosophers. They're trying to pursue higher knowledge. So he is what Prabhupada would call a jnani.
Yeah.
I think. I believe. It's not like jnani is not necessarily like a bad thing. It's just pursuance of knowledge. However, if the knowledge you're in pursuance of is not ultimately Krishna, then
it's not necessarily by definition pursuant to the correct knowledge, but it is pursuing.
But in his case, he was in pursuance of a higher truth. So.
Yeah.
All right, Srila Prabhupada. By speculation, Aristotle may have known something about God, but our point is that excuse me. But our point is that we can know everything about God from God himself. This is not a question of religion. It is simply a matter of the best process to know God. When we learn about God from God himself, then our knowledge is perfect. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 1, Krishna says, Maya Shakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjan Madashraya Asamshayam Samagramam Yata Gnasyasi Tachrinu. Yasya Gnasyasi Tachrinu. Translation, now hear me, O son of Pritha. He's talking to Arjuna. How, by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. End translation. This is the process of Krishna consciousness. Of course, we may speculate about God, and if we simply think of God, that will help us to some extent. If we are in darkness, we may speculate and concoct ideas about the sun. This is one kind of knowledge. But if we actually come into the sunlight, our knowledge is complete. We may contemplate the sun in darkness, but the best process is to come into the sunshine and see for ourselves.
Aristotle...
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't remember where it was that I read, or maybe it was in a lecture. One of the lectures that we've listened to. But they were saying how an example for this would be like you have a cave, like a bunch of people living in a cave that have never been outside. One person finally finds a way out.
He comes back and tells about the
says,
outside.
Hey, man, there's a
it
sun
sounds crazy.
outside.
It's actually in the previous chapter of this book we read.
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah. God,
and then he made Dr. Frog. He made a reference to Dr. Frog, who's in the well and can't understand the ocean. Aristotle understood substance to be composite of form and matter. Form is the essence of a substance, that by which it is what it is, its actuality. Matter, for Aristotle, is not a kind of stuff. Rather, it designates the failure of a substance to be fully informed. In other words, matter is a substance's potentiality for development toward form, or its disintegration away from form. God is perfect. He is pure form, without potentiality or matter. But man is a combination of matter and form. Since man is form and matter, he is imperfect, less than fully real or realized. This imperfection is inherent, being located in matter or potentiality.
Srila Prabhupada. That is nonsense. Man is not made of matter, but is covered by matter. Man is made of spirit. If God is spirit, then man is also spirit. In the Bible, it is also said that the man is made in God's image, or in the image of God. Therefore, man is originally perfect. A person is generally healthy, but if he falls into a disease condition, it is not his inherent imperfection. It is something external that has attacked a healthy man. According to his original nature, the living entity is healthy, or in other words, pure spirit. Makes sense.
Although Aristotle criticized the Platonic separation between matter and form, his evaluation of these two was much like that of his teacher. Matter for Aristotle is unknowable and unintelligible, of no intrinsic worth. It is the cause of imperfection, change, and destruction. Form alone is the object of knowledge and really real, or the really real, the unchangeable and enduring. It alone endows the world with meaning, intelligibility, and intrinsic purpose.
This means that the Supreme Absolute must have form. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. The word Vigraha indicates form. That form is not dead, but is the activating spirit. Krishna's form is Satchidananda, eternal, fully cognizant, and blissful. Our bodies are neither fully cognizant nor fully blissful, but Krishna's body is. He knows past, present, and future, and he is always happy. Our knowledge is limited, and we are always full of anxiety.
For Aristotle, form gives changing things an imminent goal or purpose. Entelechy. I've never seen that word before, no idea. Entelechy. E-N-T-E-L-E-C-H-Y.
Look it up.
Therefore, all matter has some form for its actualization. The world is an unfolding of phenomena realizing themselves. Phenomena and realizing themselves. In other words, nature is driven by purpose.
Entelechy?
Yeah, what's that mean?
The realization of potential.
Okay. Ah. The realization of your potential. Okay, that makes sense. You talk about imminent goals or purposes. All right, so in other words, nature is driven by purpose.
Okay. By speculation, Aristotle... Oh my God.
We agree with this.
The page flipped back on me, sorry.
No, you're fine.
We agree with this. According to the Padma Purana, there are 8,400,000 varieties of living forms, and none of them are accidental. I think just sometimes you'll hear, right, they'll say 8,400,000 species, right? But I think, again, like, that could just be a translating, because here he's saying 8,400,000 varieties, right?
Yeah.
So if you take it as varieties, that could be, okay, all insects are one variety.
Yeah.
All fish are another variety. Whereas if you take it as, the very literal, there's only 8,400,000 like species.
Yeah.
People can get all technical with insects and fish and whatever and say, well,
yeah,
because that's one thing where people will sit there and when you throw out a number and they'll try to like devalue all of your arguments just because they find like in their eyes like a flaw with your.
I love the thing that with on that class you sent me, where the guy just said, and we're getting a little off track, so we need to get back to it because I know we lose some of the flow. But he said that they basically the statement that in order for something to be true or real or for it to exist, you have to be able to prove it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
That statement is only provable if it's true, which means that statement on its own is already breaking its own rules, because it's saying that in order for something to exist, you have to be able to prove it's true. But nobody ever proved that statement. There's no way to prove it without circular reasoning, which is what he was talking about. Was like you now have to go back. You end up back in kind of like you just end up going, well, yeah, because in order to, you have to prove it. But like you have to believe that, and then from that you build. But if you don't believe that, then the whole system breaks apart. Not to say it's not true to some extent, because you should be able to prove things. But it's like it's not an end-all be-all, because if it was, it would be self-evident, self-provable. And it's not, and because in order for it to be true, you have to just believe it. Just like how they say they hate blind faith, right? Some people, certain people are like, oh no, blind faith, which faith shouldn't be blind, but that's a whole other thing. But like this idea of like faith being like a flaw, and yet in order for their system to work, they have to have faith at some base level. Yeah,
of course.
Science. But there's a lot of great scientists, that's what I liked about it too, is the fact that he talked about all the importance of science and the relationship between science and religion. It was so like potent and clear and like, and he actually clearly knows, like you said, he got like a PhD or he got like degrees and like a lot of
well, I think in regards to, oh my god, dude, my neck, man.
Piling. What did he say PhD stood for? Piling
it higher and deeper.
Yeah, piling higher and deeper. And he said, and it's talking about something. It's like that in the English language starts with the word and the letter S. So, but it's very, very cool.
Well, I think in regards to the self-evident truth, yes, at some point there has to be
a baseline,
a base of faith, which
no matter what system you're using.
Shraddha, right? Shraddha means faith. Faith. You can't have 100% blind faith.
No.
However, you have to have something for faith to be built upon, and that's where, and that's I think what he was getting at with self-evident truth. Self-evident truth is something, right? Anywhere, anyone in the world can look up and see the sky is blue, the sun is orange, the moon is white. Now, you have to make some assumptions that the world is actually real, and what you're experiencing is not a hallucination. But let's just, that's where some faith comes in. Okay, if you want to dismiss everything, then you can't even actually have an intelligent, intellectual
conversation or debate or study
or study of what it is you even want to talk about.
Right.
So you have to automatically assume that the universe is real, what we're experiencing is real.
Yeah.
And then from there, now you can say, okay, if what I'm experiencing is real, and other people can also see the leaves are green, the sky is blue, the sun is this.
Yeah.
Then that's where you have to have the faith. But then once you have those, like, universally, assuming everything is real and everything exists, you have those universal truths. Those are the things that you need to now, utilize in your pursuit for
Right.
knowledge. Yeah, it's like...
I like the description of how, like, the search for God, or, you know, whatever you want to call God, you know, because, of course, God, it being all powerful, why, like, you know, I was thinking about the other day, like, we dress up for things. We do costume parties, Halloween, we pretend to be someone we're not, plays, movies, right, where you pretend to be someone else. Yeah. You take on not even pretend, let's just say you take on a character, right?
Yeah. It's fun.
It's fun. So if we have an all-powerful person whose image we are made of, why wouldn't he have multiple forms and multiple names and different personality? Like, why wouldn't he play all these different parts? Wouldn't he want to have a good time?
Yeah.
So in that sense too, and I was thinking, like, and then what he was saying, which is very so clearly stated, was that, like, you know, like, he was talking about the guy, I forget which, I think it was a college in California that he was going to, where one of the teachers was, like, one of the leading authorities on the search for the brown dwarfs, which are the stars that, like, didn't quite become a star, right? Like, they had a theory that it's possible they existed, and so they're just, like, searching for the brown dwarf, you know?
They found it.
I wasn't even positive they found it or not, but at any rate, they're searching for it. He's like, but in order for that to work, they had to say, okay, assuming the brown dwarfs exist,
and assuming all of our science is real,
right? What methods can we use to find it? Like, if brown dwarfs do exist, what are we looking for? Yeah. And then they, you know, went about their search. And so his likening that to the looking for God, like, trying to figure out, he's like, you know, you have this all-powerful entity, and it's like, you know, if in a socioeconomic position where you have nothing to offer and the job you're applying for has everything, because they have the money you want, they have the position you want, possibly like a social position too, like some kind of status that comes with the job, whatever. But you are one of God knows how many applicants that have applied and are going in there to try to get that job. So what do you have to do when you don't have much to offer?
Need you.
No, they don't need you the way you want them, right? So you have to go in there and be like, okay, I gotta, like, show up, and, like, I gotta, like, do good. And so you have to please them. You have to impress them in some way. You have to make them happy, make them feel desired, whatever the term, I mean, that can be, but, like, whatever the terminology you want to use, but, like, you have to please them, basically.
Of course.
And so if that's a position just in a job, right? With this corporate entity, why wouldn't the all-powerful entity that you're searching for also need to be pleased in order to to you know, hire you on, or however you want to look at it? I know it's not a perfect analogy, but it was one he was talking about it, and he explained it better than I did.
No, of course.
But
I remember what part you're talking about.
I think that's something that I thought would be really valuable to say at some point while we were talking, and it just kind of came up at this point for me. I was, like, thinking about that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up, because another part that I liked, and this is kind of like tying into that, is when he said, in regarding atheism, right? Because a lot of... So you can have outright atheists. So you're an atheist, right? I don't believe in God at all. No way. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Impossible. But then he also... It might have been in the second lecture that I sent you. I don't remember which one it was. But then he says, but some people say they believe in God. And I think this is where a lot of people fall into, myself included, because I never had heard someone put it like the way he did. Yeah. And he's like, so you have your philosophical atheist, but then you have your psychological atheist, where you say you believe in God, but your actions don't show that you believe in God. Because if you believe, right, and this analogy, like, blew my stack. So he said... Okay, in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Krishna gives... Yeah. He has these qualities, right? He is infinitely beautiful, infinitely wealthy, infinitely wise, infinitely... Oh, God. See, now I'm being a... Anyway, basically all the qualities that we find attractive. Yeah. Beauty, knowledge, power, wealth, fame. God has those same qualities. Again, we're made in God's image. We have them in small amounts. God has them in infinite amounts. So if we say we believe in God, that means we want those, we assuming we believe in God, if we're spending our life pursuing beauty, money, happiness, fame, for ourselves, and we say we believe in God, that right there is showing that inside we're thinking that we deserve those things. But if you actually were after happiness, if you actually were after beauty, if you actually were after wealth, and you really truly believed in God, you would only want God because God is infinite of all of those qualities.
Yeah.
So it would be like, you know, a little kid saying, I want vanilla ice cream, and you get vanilla ice cream and give it to him. No, I don't want that. I want vanilla ice cream. Well, here it is. So you say you believe in God, but if your actions don't line up with it, now you're like psychologically,
Yeah.
you know, or at the very least, what I took it to mean was you believe in God, but you don't fully want to surrender to him yet.
Right, right.
Is how, you know,
Sure.
and then, but then as far as like atheism, I love how he said, okay, atheist, you're saying you're saying God doesn't exist. Well, that means, and we're assuming that we're talking about a God that is infinitely wise, knows past, present, future, omniscient, omnipotent, all-powerful.
Right.
So you tell me God doesn't exist, then I can say, well, that means nobody in the universe
Can actually
knows
definitively
everything.
say that.
Yes.
Because he's saying no one is all-powerful and all-knowing.
Exactly.
So by you saying that, like I said
Logically,
earlier, that
you
other
can't
statement,
say God
same
doesn't
thing.
exist because you don't know for sure.
Yeah. And so it's the same thing,
And
like
it
you're
was
defeating
like, oh,
yourself
crap.
because if there is no all-knowing individual, then...
How do you know that there isn't? And if there is one, who are you to know that he exists or not?
Right. And then I think the karma thing he brought up about people said, well, you know, if there's a God, what would happen? Why are all these atrocities happening? Why do so many bad things happen to good people, quote unquote?
Yeah.
And he said, he didn't get into it in detail, but he said, because it was like, he'd already been talking for an hour and a half, and he was like, we got to write this up. And so he kind of just briefly said, you know, it's like, it's a whole other discussion. He's like, but if you look at it on a wider scale, he's like, if you believe in reincarnation, which he's like, if you don't believe in reincarnation, that's a whole nother, but he mentioned that too, like, your body changes over the course, like, from being a baby to a child to an adolescent to, as he said, extended adolescence instead of saying adult, and then to like old age, and eventually you die. But throughout all that time, you have memories. You're still you. Your body is changing. So that means you aren't your body. Because if you are your body, how can your body? You're not, and you're not changing. It just doesn't like. It's like there is
Logically,
something going on.
sense.
You're not fully. You're connected, but not fully connected. There's some. You're obviously in your body.
You're the
in your body.
You're able
You're
to
not
observe
your body.
you doing something, which means, yeah, exactly. You aren't this. And it's even in our language, right? We don't say I hand. Prabhupada would say this.
Yeah.
You don't say I hand, I head, I arm.
My
You
head.
say my hand, my arm,
hand.
my leg, my body.
Yeah.
You say my body. Oh, my back hurts, my head hurts, my heart. So that just, even in our language, it's woven in there, but we take it for granted that, okay, that implies that this body, well, we think it belongs to me, but really it doesn't, because when you die, the body is taken away from you.
Yeah.
So it never belonged to you in the first place.
Yeah. And it's just temporary, but obviously you, like, especially if people get older, they often say that they still feel the same. It's not like they feel old. Like their identity is not getting older. Their body's getting older. There's more aches, there's things, but they still feel like the same person.
Oh, I hear it at
And
work,
I can see it
in the
now,
hospital all
like
the
even
time.
just between me and like my
time
teenage
flies.
self. Like, of course you're learning things, but I still feel like the same person.
I still feel like a little kid, huh?
I know. Like it's just, it is what it
Especially when
is.
we hang out, I'm like, this is surreal. We're adulting right now? Wait.
It's just...
We're supposed to be playing with action figures.
But I like the fact that he said with the karma that, like, you're looking at it from too short of a time span. And he didn't say this, but then I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking, like, if you are doing a transaction, if I buy something online, and you only look at, like, the day or two around when I bought that, it looks like they stole money from me. I paid them, I have nothing. Now, a week later, I get the thing in the mail. So on a wider scope, it was an even transaction. In that moment, if all you see is me paying money and getting zip, then you're going to be like, that's so unfair. But that's not the whole thing.
True. That you're not seeing the big picture.
And so, I mean, he didn't extrapolate on because I said that it was running out, but I feel like that's something that came to me that's like, that's kind of a decent example of like how we don't really understand the things that happen on a wider scale. We're not our bodies, so yes, it's terrible. People are going through the suffering. But it's not that these people that are bad don't ever see the results of their actions, don't ever get, quote unquote punished, even whether it happens in this life or in another life or whatever happens. Like there's a wider balancing going on. Because you
it's on a
can't balance
cosmic
everything in
scale.
a split second. If you
No,
could,
no.
then nothing would ever happen. You would have to just, nobody could move in order for everything to be perfectly balanced at all times. Like, how does that, like, there's always movement, there's give and take, there's push and pull. So you have to have, like, kind of like a back and forth, which obviously requires some amount of, like, quote unquote time from our perspective.
Oh, of course.
And I think that's something that's often missed when you're looking at just, like, the here and now. And in our life,
another great
100
example
years seems
he gave
so long,
was,
but it's really not.
Right, like your kid does something bad.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to punish your kid forever.
Right. It's a temporary punishment.
You temporarily, there may be some ramifications, but then you give them another chance.
Yeah.
So to his point, also, we're talking about Hridayananda Swami, aka Peter Resnick.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah. We may put a little something in the
yeah.
description for this. I gotta remember to do that.
His lectures are so inspirational.
Very well studied person. Beyond just what we're reading about, like we're talking
Jesus
about, like
Christ.
he went and got multiple degrees and stuff to understand all the different scientific studies and stuff. He's done a lot.
He's a powerful speaker. But anyway, so this example, you don't punish your kid forever.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're this goes back to Bible or whatever, right? We're created in God's image.
Yeah.
So if we have kindness towards our kids, even when they mess up, that would imply, if we are really made in God's image, that God also has love. And he does. He says it in the Bhagavad Gita, right? I just read you that verse. I feel love for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So a God that would punish you and send you to hell forever just because you didn't believe.
Oh yeah, that's so. Well, he's mentioned before that some of these religious fanaticism, like views
that would be an evil
from multiple
God.
religions. He's talking about all the fanaticism.
No, I know.
He's
it's
like,
not just Christianity.
It's everything.
Whatever
all,
it is.
Even some of people
some
who
of the
study
Hare Krishnas. If you don't accept
100%.
Krishna, then
all this ridiculous, like just beating people over the head as if that's what we're taught, which is just so ludicrous. Because you look at it, and I love what he said. He's like, God is not a religious fanatic.
He's not. He's a
So
logical,
why would
reasonable
we, in
being.
honor of God, be a religious fanatic?
Yeah.
He's like, it doesn't make any sense. It's
No,
like,
it doesn't.
no, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't
Because
make-
that's not like, and then he mentioned like to your point that like if God is like, if you look at the parent example, that God would be a psychopath of a parent.
Yeah,
If
totally.
he just wants to like
It'd be
make
evil.
us and hide forever and do all these weird things to
hide
us
forever, and then
it's like-
you didn't accept me. You didn't accept me. You're gonna burn in hell forever.
And he said like he's actually
it's
here.
sick.
He wants, but we have to be willing to go through the understanding of like, how to actually realize that he is everywhere. It's like, well, I haven't seen him. It's like he's not gonna walk in the door that way. At least not right now. But like you're seeing him in the people you're dealing with, in the things there. And of course, if you're studying and reading and stuff, you're starting to understand like all the different ways. But it's like
I have an example.
it's like running away from home or something, and then being mad that your parent isn't there when you wake up in the morning. Like you went. You
No,
ran
exactly.
off.
That's
like,
a good. I gave an analogy to Shruti. After this, we can get back. I gave an analogy to Shruti this morning, and I said something. I don't remember how the conversation came up, but I said, "All right, for example, a stranger." I was talking about seeing God everywhere, right? And so, in the Bhagavad Gita, God says, I'm a personality, but yet I'm also everywhere. I'm within all living things. I'm within every atom. The very energy of consciousness and life, that is God all around us.
Yeah.
We just are failing to see it through that lens. And then, so, for example, some stranger comes up to me out of nowhere, and I've had this happen right at work, and they just like give you a little piece of advice that like you may be going through something in your life, and then this stranger comes up and says something that really applies to what it is you're struggling through.
Yeah.
Right? Well, if you understand that Krishna, God, as Paramatma, who resides in the heart of all living beings, if you really walk around the world and see the world through that way, then when that person comes up and gives you that piece of advice, or a good friend, or a parent, or even someone yelling at you, chastising you, but giving you good advice, if you're seeing through the lens of, God is everywhere, God is in the heart of this person talking to me, therefore, it is actually God inspiring this person to speak to me and give me this advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason why we don't, show me God. Well, if you're not looking, the right way, for example, you look at the sun without sunglasses, you're going to get blinded, right? Yeah. So you try to look at God without the right eyewear, you're blinded by Maya, right? You're not able to see him in that way.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to work towards it.
And also, like with the other example of like the shipping the order online, you could after 2 days of not having received your package decide that the business does not exist because you haven't seen your package yet. But it still could show up at the end of the week. Mm. Or COVID-19's delaying packages right now. It's like there's things you're unaware of. Yeah, your chair's still on the way.
Oh, I'm waiting for that. All right.
You're gonna, you gotta look. You get to look forward to it forever. I think it took mine. I think without exaggeration, it was a little over 6 weeks to show up. That's how long it took.
I'm waiting every day.
I was checking it. I'm like, man, when are they gonna ship this thing?
All right.
Keep reading from the beginning of Prabhupada's thing. I'm gonna run to the kitchen real fast, but keep going.
Srila Prabhupada, we agree with this. I'm gonna read your question first. So, disciple, for Aristotle, form gives changing things an For Aristotle, form gives changing things an imminent goal or purpose, enteleki. Therefore, all matter has some form for its actualization. The world is an unfolding of phenomena realizing themselves. In other words, nature is driven by purpose. Okay.
Just to kind of reset it.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada. We agree with this. According to the Padma Purana, there are 8,400,000 varieties of living forms. Man, we went off on a tangent, but that was good. It felt good to... And none of them are accidental. According to one's karma, one receives a particular form. Lord Brahma receives his form according to his karma. And the dog or the cat receives its form according to its karma. There is no question of accident. Nature unfolds in accordance with a plan, by virtue of which these various forms are existing. Real quick, how you were saying, like, talking about how everything is all interwoven, the karma, right? Mm-hmm. That is why only somebody of God's ability, all-knowing, all-powerful, omnipotent, he's able to see all of these things. The past, the present, the future. But again, to us, like, even Lord Brahma, who is, huge, powerful being, he's even completely lost to all of it.
Yeah.
Yastva indragopam atavendram atosva karma bandana rupa phalavanjanam atanoti. God, I don't even know where that's from, and the meter is... Okay. From translation. From Indra down to the Indragopa, a microscopic germ, all living entities are working out the results of their karma. If one's karma is good, he attains a higher form. If it is not good, he attains a lower form. There is a process of evolution. And by evolution, the living entity passes from one species to another, from fish to trees to vegetables, to insects, to birds, beasts, and humans. In the human form, the result of evolution is fully manifest. It is like a flower unfolding from a bud. When the living entity attains the human form, his proper duty is to understand his lost relationship with God. If he misses this opportunity, he may regress. Aristotle is correct, therefore, when he says that everything has a purpose. The whole creative process aims at bringing the living entity back home, back to Godhead.
Does every living entity eventually come to that point?
As a human being, you can properly utilize your consciousness or you can misuse it. That is up to you. Krishna gives Arjuna instructions and then tells him that the decision is up to him. Under the orders of Krishna, nature has brought you through so many species. Now, as a human, you can choose whether to return to God or again endure the cycle of birth and death. If you are unfortunate, you make the If you are fortunate, you make the proper choice according to the instructions of the spiritual master and Krishna. Then your life is successful.
Aristotle sees a hierarchy of forms extending from minerals, vegetables, and animals up to human beings, and ultimately God, who is pure form and pure act. God is devoid of all potentiality or materiality.
Of course there is a hierarchy, and the individual soul transmigrates from one form to another. That is a fact. But who is to say that the next form you attain is closer to perfection? If you have a human form this life, there is no guarantee that you will get a higher form in the next. You accept another form just as you accept another suit of clothing. Those clothes may be valuable or of no value whatsoever. You get your clothes according to the price that you pay, and you accept a form according to your work. Similarly, you bring about your own form, and you enjoy or suffer according to your work. I think a good example of that is, right, a wealthy businessman or someone, a super fit athlete, right? If someone dedicates their life to going to the gym, working out, just honing their abilities to be a professional athlete, you're going to see it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you choose to sit at home and just binge on, junk food and, drink and just do all kinds of awful things, when you're in the hospital at 55 years old and and your health is all deteriorated, that right there is an example of, okay, you're reaping what you've sown.
Yeah.
And those are just examples that you can see within this one lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, a material form is never perfect because it undergoes 6 changes. It is born, it grows, it stays for a while. It leaves some byproducts, like children or waste products, whatever. It dwindles and then it vanishes. When your form vanishes, you have to take on another form, which also undergoes the same process. When a form vanishes, it decomposes, and its various elements return to nature. Water returns to water, earth returns to earth, air returns to air, and so forth.
Aristotle's God is the unmoved mover. He is perfect and he wants nothing. He does not have to actualize himself because he is completely actualized.
We agree that God is all perfect. Parashara Muni defines God as the totality of wisdom, strength, wealth, fame, beauty, and renunciation. That was the one I was forgetting earlier, was renunciation. Krishna possesses all of these qualities in full, and when he was present on earth, everyone could see that he was all perfect. A perfect person can rule others, and we accept the leadership of a person according to his degree of perfection. If one is not somewhat wise, beautiful, wealthy, and so forth, why should we accept him as a leader? Well, America's done it. Yep. And one who is supremely perfect in all these qualities is the supreme leader. That is natural. Since Krishna is supremely perfect, we should accept him as our leader.
God is pure form or actuality, without matter or potentiality. But for Aristotle, form without matter means thought. Therefore, he considered God to be entirely mind or intellect, nous, and the divine life to be the life of the mind. God's perfection requires this.
When he said that God is mind, what did he mean? Did he have some conception of God's personality? God must be a person, otherwise how could he think?
Aristotle said that God's activity was thought, and that his thought had itself as its sole object. God's thinking is nosios, thinking of thinking. Thus, his nature is self-contemplation.
Does this mean that when one is perfect, he engages in no activity? Does God simply sit down and meditate? If so, what is the difference between God and a stone? A stone simply sits. It has no activity. No activity. How is inactivity perfection? Krishna never meditates, yet when he speaks, he delivers perfect knowledge. Krishna enacts various pastimes. He fights with demons, protects his devotees, dances with the gopis, and delivers words of enlightenment. There is no question of sitting like a stone and engaging in self-contemplation.
But is it not possible to meditate while acting?
Certainly, but God doesn't have to meditate. Why should he? He is perfect. One meditates to come from the imperfect stage to the perfect stage. Since God is perfect to begin with, what business does he have meditating? Everything is simply actualized by his will alone. Aristotle recommends that a man should meditate to become perfect. This meditation presupposes imperfection. Contemplation is recommended for conditioned living entities, but we should understand that God is never conditioned or imperfect. He is so powerful that whatever he desires or wills immediately comes into being. This information is given in the Vedas. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate. God's multi-energies are so powerful that everything is immediately actualized as soon as he desires.
But what about the meditations of the Buddha?
Buddha's mission was different. Just for anyone that may not be familiar, according to the Vedic scriptures, Buddha was considered to be an incarnation of God. And the reason, he came to because people were using the Vedic scriptures as an excuse to, slaughter animals and start to commit these different atrocities, all in the name of, but it says so in the scriptures. So Buddha's goal was to come and move people away from the scriptures because they were using them in the wrong way, like they were becoming fanatical. Yeah. And so he was trying to move, we should be peaceful and whatever. Yeah. And then Lord Chaitanya came with him to again, steer it back. Anyway, Buddha's mission was different. He was setting an example for miscreants who were engaged in mischievous activities. He was recommending that they sit down and meditate, just as you tell a mischievous child to sit in a corner and be quiet.
Aristotle never really says that we should end our activities, but he does say that we should contemplate God.
That is our process. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. One should always think of Krishna. Krishna consciousness means remembering Krishna and acting for him. When you sweep Krishna's temple, you remember Krishna. When you cook for Krishna, you remember Krishna. When you talk about Krishna, you remember Krishna. That is the process Krishna himself recommends in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 47. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatenantaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yuktamo mata. Translation. Of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. That is my opinion.
Aristotle reasons that if God were to know changing things, it would entail change in God himself. Thus it seems that Aristotle's God has no knowledge of the world. This means that he cannot return the love he receives. He neither loves nor cares for mankind.
What kind of God is this? If one knows nothing of God, one should not speak of God. God certainly reciprocates with his devotees. As we offer our love to God, he responds and cooperates accordingly. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 11, Krishna says, Ye yata mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajanyam. Mamavart manuvartante manushya partasarvasha. Translation. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. End of translation. When we fully surrender to God in loving service, we can actually understand God's nature.
According to Aristotle, God causes motion in the world, not actively, but by being the object of desire. He moves the world the way the beloved moves the lover. In spite of his being the supreme object of thought and desire, there is no mention of his being a person. On the contrary, he seems to be merely a sort of consciousness that has no object save itself.
It appears that Aristotle is a Mayavadi, an impersonalist, which that is one of the aspects of God, right? Yeah. Bhagavan, Paramatma, and Brahman. Paramatma, the aspect of God, the localized aspect of God. Bhagavan, the actual personality, and Brahman, which is like the all-pervading energy of God. Yeah. You know that. I was just... it appears that Aristotle is a Mayavadi, an impersonalist. One has to speculate if one does not receive perfect knowledge from God himself.
But at least the idea of God's moving the world by attraction shows some idea of God as the all-attractive.
Unless God is all-attractive, how can he be God? Therefore, the word Krishna, which means all-attractive, is the perfect name for God. God attracts everyone. In Vrindavan, he attracts his parents, the cowherd boys, the girls, The animals, the fruits, the flowers, the trees, everything. Even the water was attracted to Krishna. The 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam describes how the water of the river Jamuna would become stunned in ecstasy and stop flowing as soon as she saw Krishna.
Aristotle had the idea that God was totally unified, without duality. In what way would you say that God's thought and his activity are one?
God need only think of a thing in order for that thing to be created or actualized. God's thinking, feeling, willing, and acting are the same. Because we are imperfect, when we think of something, it may or may not happen. But whenever God thinks of something, it takes place. Because Krishna thought that the battle of Kurukshetra should take place, there was no stopping it. At first, Arjuna declined to fight, but Krishna plainly told him that whether he fought or not, almost all of the warriors there were destined to die. He therefore told Arjuna to become his instrument and take the credit for killing them. No one can check what God decides. It doesn't matter whether you help God or not, but it is in your interest that you become his instrument. Yeah, damn, that you can't argue with that.
Aristotle said that a person is happiest and most like the divine himself when he performs his activities in such a way that he is always contemplating things divine.
Yes, that is the process of bhakti, devotional service. But unless one is a devotee, how can he constantly think of God? Srila Rupa Goswami gives the example of a married woman who has a lover. She performs her household chores very nicely, but she is always thinking, when will my lover come to me at night? So if it is possible to think of an ordinary person all the time, why not God? It is simply a question of practice, or developing your attraction for him. Then, despite engaging in so many different types of work, you can think of God incessantly. Now, Aristotle may have some vague conception of God, but he has no clear idea of Krishna's personality. We can think concretely of God because we receive information from Vedic literature that God is a person, and he acts in a certain way. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that the impersonalists experience a great deal of trouble because they have no clear idea of God. If you have no conception of God's form, your attempt to realize God will be very difficult.
For Aristotle, God is known by speculative reason, not by revelation.
Just like a little side note. So the reason, basically what he's inferring right here in the chunk that I just read, and what I've heard elsewhere, and the reason, because some people, right, they, especially coming from like a Christian or Jewish or Muslim background, Judeo-Christian, right?
Yeah.
Or other religions, they may say, well, I have a hard time buying that God personally appeared on earth, performed pastimes, and then left.
Yeah.
But the reason he performs, right, he's saying here that, so bhakti, devotional service, you should be thinking,
he wants to give you all the ways to think of him, so
exactly.
you can actually do. He's giving
like
you all the tools you need.
Yeah, we watch Star Wars, we watch Lord of the Rings, and you can sit there and you can talk about it and you nerd out on it. The reason he comes is to give us pastimes so that we can nerd out on them, and because otherwise, if there's no pastimes at all, that's why Aristotle thought of God the way he thought of him, because
he didn't have anything to reference.
He didn't hear these pastimes. He didn't,
He didn't have anything to reference.
Even in the look at Jesus, right? A good Christian lives according to the life of Jesus.
Yeah.
Why did Jesus come? God gave us Jesus to say, here's a living example on earth. Yeah. This is how you should follow me. This is how you should devote your life to me. Mm-hmm. You should love God with, Jesus said, love God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul, and love your neighbor as you love thyself. And he literally appeared to show through the example of his life how to practice forgiveness, how to practice renunciation, how to practice, love and compassion for all things.
Yep.
And so, and I love that when I meet Christians at work that understand that aspect of it. And they really, you can tell there's a genuine love for Jesus Christ within them. And that's the whole purpose of the pastimes, is so you can create a bond.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just thinking of,
There's real life
all-pervading,
examples.
It can get really confusing. Clearly is Aristotle experience. I mean, he has a lot of good...
I also, before you read the rest of it, something I've been thinking about is that I don't know what aspects were incorrect and what was correct, but my grandfather, Yadanandana Das, or Papa as I call him, he was saying, I guess, that this book, while it is interesting, some of the things that the disciples portray as thoughts of these great minds, they're not all entirely correct. Like the disciples made some mistakes, and they're presenting what they understood to be the philosophy, but they weren't necessarily perfect students of that philosophy, which makes sense because they're doing something else. But like basically, he was just saying that they're well read in it, but not like I guess I don't know what Papa was familiar with, but I guess he read something that he knew different, and so he felt like that aspect of the book was unfortunate, just on that level of like. It would have been nice if they had got it perfect, because then it would have been a perfect discussion. But, I mean, the main point is what Prabhupada's saying in response. Of course, it's not so much about, but just in case somebody is knowing more of this and something they say in this book is wrong, I just want to point out that we're aware that it's possible that some of the things that they're portraying as Plato's thought or Aristotle's thought. The point was more
academic.
Right. Their idea is more like, what is your philosophy based on this sort of general idea? Yeah. And they're asking several questions. So forgive any mistakes if you're a student of one of those and you know that something is maybe a little bit off.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I'm picking up, right? Okay. We are all limited, and God is unlimited. Therefore, we cannot understand God by our limited sensory powers. Consequently, God must be known by revelation, right? Christians talk about that all the time, revelation. Yep. As the Padma Purana states, Ata Shri Krishna Namadhi Nabhaved Grayamindriya. It is not possible to know God by mental speculation, but when he engages in his service, he, God, reveals himself. As Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, I love how he backs up all of his stuff with just quotes off the top of his head. Bhagavad Gita 7:25. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita mudho yam nabijannati lokamam ajamavyayam. I am never manifest to the fools and the unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, Maya. And therefore, or Yogamaya, right? And therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. End quote. It is a fact that unless God reveals himself, he is not known. Therefore he appears in great authorities like Vyasadeva, Narada, Sukadev Goswami, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all great scholars and transcendentalists, accept him as he reveals himself. Arjuna saw God face to face, and he accepted him. When we are freed of ignorance by our service to God, God reveals himself.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap this one up. We're getting close to an hour here. Do you have something you want to say for a wrap up? We got probably about 2 minutes or so until we actually hit an hour.
I was going to say something on that. I don't remember.
The revealing himself aspect. Service. God reveals himself when we are freed of ignorance by our service to God. All these great scholars accept him as he reveals himself.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So, in the Mahabharata, right?
Yeah.
After the battle and years go by, eventually, Krishna leaves Earth. But it's not like he just ascends into a cloud.
Yeah.
He actually, the mother of the Kauravas, Gandhari, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, she's so furious. All of her kids were killed. She knows deep down that they were all in the wrong and they got their comeuppance.
Yeah.
But she still was angry with Krishna because, it was all part of the pastime. But she actually cursed Krishna. She said, your dynasty will all kill themselves. In 36 years from now, you and all of your dynasty will all perish. And she, because her husband was born blind, when she married him, she blindfolded herself and voluntarily took on the austerity of, my husband can't see, I'm not going to see either. and she practiced yoga like
Yeah.
hardcore. So she was very powerful. Krishna is God. He could easily have said, yeah, whatever. But he respected her. And it also worked out because his devotees were all his family, and he didn't want to like leave them in the material world, because he thought these warriors are way more powerful than the Kauravas we killed, and if they become corrupted, then they're going to be even more dangerous. So he's like, I need a reason how to take them out. And so this happened, and therefore, and actually, anyway, keep it short, but he gets shot by a hunter. He's out meditating in the woods. His brother is left. He gets shot in the foot, and so that is, the cause of his, quote, death.
Yeah.
And, but basically, he does that, and this is how, like, beautiful God is, or can be, if you think of him in the right way. He comes down, he does all of these heroic feats to show people that, yeah, I look like you, I walk like you, I talk like you, I dress like you, but I'm not human. I'm something else.
Yeah.
But he leaves, because he wants to respect our free will. Mm-hmm. If you want to be an atheist and you don't want to believe in God, he left in such a way that the atheist can say, no, see, he got killed, he's immortal, right? So he even in like every one of his pastimes, every part of them was so carefully choreographed that it actually respects the free will of us. We can choose to believe, well, he did these miraculous things, he must be God, and because he is God, he chose to live in the way he did. Whereas also the person who doesn't believe in God can say, yeah, well, he did these superhuman feats, but it's kind of really.
So with that, we're probably a little over an hour at the recording, I'm not sure, but we're right around there. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up with the reading of Aristotle. And don't forget to share if you think anybody you know would like the podcast, or however you're watching it, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or wherever else you may be listening to it. And on Instagram, we're on Instagram as well. We'll put the links in the description of wherever this is. So just share us and let us know what you're getting from it, if you're getting something of value, and if there's anything that would improve it for you, or something that you'd like us to talk about, or maybe a book that you'd like us to read.
Recommend a book?
Yeah, recommend a book. That'd be cool. So at any rate, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.